Welcome back to Reset. Younger me would be screaming right now if she knew who I had in the podcast studio with me. I'm interviewing Lisa Messenger. She is an author, a serial entrepreneur. Latest titles are AI expert, prompt engineer. What are we saying, Lisa?
Yes, AI? That'll do.
That'll do. She's also a mama of one, soon to be two gorgeous kids. Lisa, welcome to Reset.
Thank you. It is so beautiful to be here. I just said I feel like I'm in your home. It's divine. Thank you.
Lisa, you have reinvented yourself many, many times. But I'm curious, if 25-year-old Lisa was sitting on the couch with us today, what achievements do you think she would be most impressed by?
Well, oh my gosh. And talking about being 25, I think what I would say to anyone who is, to myself included, is that anything is possible, really. And you just don't know that back then. What would I be most impressed by? I think my tenacity over and over again and my ability to reinvent multiple times now. But yeah, launching Collective Hub in 2013, which was in 37 countries within 18 months, going through now 20 rounds of IVF to have not one but two babies. So that was a lot. But I now have my 3-year-old Hugo, and it is the most miraculous thing I've ever done. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of things, but I think overarching is being courageous enough to keep reinventing and not stagnating and finding more ways than one to do anything.
Has your definition of success changed since you were 25?
Yes. So I kind of, when we're going from 25, I would break it into sort of 3 periods. I would kind of go 25 to 30. I had no semblance of who I was. I just was I was quite successful at any job that I did, but none of it made sense. I was like a horse riding instructor. Then I worked in real estate. Then I worked in conference and event management. And I think I was very much leading life according to other people's expectations and quite lost, and also drinking and partying hard. And so the defining moment, or the turning point for me, was at 30, I decided to give up drinking, which was like a massive thing back then because now it's quite the norm and it's quite cool. But back then, no one didn't drink. But I did not have a good relationship with alcohol and was very unpredictable. But doing that for me, and, we have more champagne in my fridge than anyone, and I still love to table dance. I just do it consciously. But my point is there around being courageous enough to find how I was self-sabotaging and holding myself back, and I was using alcohol as a crutch. And when I put that down and started doing personal development and doing the work on myself and really choosing to live, my 20s, it was quite dark. I spent quite a lot of time being suicidal. So then I kind of really started to step into my own, and I gave up drinking in 2004 and I wrote my first book. And so that's when things really, really kind of started to take off. Success then started being less about, I think before then success was measured by proving myself to my mother. Like that's like a lot of childhood wounding. And I was like, look at me, can you see me now? Which kind of held me in good stead because I kept achieving, but it was never going to be enough. I love my mum. We have an amazing relationship now, but I let go of that. So the next period of success for me was very much around, okay, now I want to step into my purpose and I want to help other people to overcome adversity and start writing books and things. And so then I had a very, very, very big career in a lot of countries and a lot of different revenue streams and things. And so success then was about impacting more people and achieving more and like pushing every limit. Success now is freedom and choice. And so I've gone from having very, very big teams, big offices, big everything. And now I have 0 staff, which I used to be embarrassed about because it was such a measure of success. And now I'm like, actually, the ability to still have, sizable businesses doing things that I love and getting to spend a lot of time with Hugo, who I wanted and tried to have for 10 years, is just different. And success now is, we live on a farm in Byron. I have chickens. my first novel comes out in 2 months. So I've like been learning other crafts, which is amazing. And I've been teaching myself AI and now training other people in AI. And yeah, so it's just, I'm still achieving because I love, love, love business, but I'm being much more conscious and purposeful about how I spend my time these days.
Do you think you could have got to that point without the success in the past?
I don't think I could have got to that point without a lot of failure. I think because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And you were saying before, and thank you, that, you know, you were an avid reader of Collective Hub when I had the print magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, that part of my life, this is my 25th year of having my own business. It's a lot. But pre-Collective Hub, I'd already had my business for 11 years. So it's like it took me a long time to truly step into the highest, best iteration of my purpose. And then when I launched Collective Hub, it was like almost overnight. It was just like the hottest thing on everyone's lips. And we had Sarah Jessica Parker and Ryan Gosling and George Clooney and Martha Stewart and like Anne Hathaway, Reese Witherspoon, all these incredible people on our covers. And the doors that it opened for me and the brand and our community were extraordinary. But you don't know what you don't know until you're there. And I often say I'm a great founder. I'm not necessarily a great CEO, although I've certainly learned. But going from a couple of $1 million of turnover and 3 staff to 36 full-time staff and tens of millions of dollars of turnover, a physical product in 37 countries, plus digital was huge. We were doing 8 articles a day and we were running 4 events a week around Australia. And I was on and off stages speaking all over the world. So it was like, and writing books and. So it was big, big, big. So I am so grateful for having been there because otherwise I'd still be wondering, you know, because everyone used to say bigger is better. And, you know, the bigger the brand is and the more, you know, ego. And then it got so big and I was like, that is amazing. And the opportunities and that it opened up and the people that we were able to impact and the community we built, but also at what cost. And one of the big costs, which is very real for me, is that I almost forgot to have a baby because I think we're told throughout our 20s, you know, be careful, wear protection, you're going to fall pregnant.
Yeah.
And so we just think that's going to happen so naturally. And then when it didn't, it took me 10 years to try and fall pregnant, now 20 rounds of IVF, 2 surrogates. So I didn't carry my first baby and I'm not carrying the current one. So I am currently 5 months pregnant, but not showing because she's in somebody else. So I think we hear this a lot. We start businesses for freedom and choice, and often it becomes anything but because we start to feel like we need to be the first one in the office and the last one to leave. And, you know, and then suddenly when you've got a lot of staff, my salary bill back then was $3.5 million. My offices cost like $350,000. There were a lot of 3 5s that included multiple zeros. And that wasn't even all our freelancers. And, you know, it was a huge, huge, huge business. And so the difference in terms of success now is that people say to me, oh my God, you do so much. But actually my output is extraordinary, but I'm doing things that I love and they're all project driven. And that gives me much more flexibility and freedom and choice to play with Hugo and then, you know, write a novel or, you know, whatever it happens to be, run a retreat once a month, which is like really fabulous and really profitable and it's dip in and dip out. Whereas when you're running a really big behemoth of a thing, you're in there all the time and you can't get out.
Yeah.
A lot of people say starting a business is hard. Trying to wind out of one is like 10 times harder. I don't recommend.
One of the books that you published in the past was Daring and Disruptive. If you were to re-release that now, what are some of the key takeaways that you think people would get?
Isn't it funny? So I have written 40 nonfiction books and before anyone goes, that's amazing. It's not amazing because most people are the guru of something and then they write a book. But I've always come up with the topic, Daring and Disruptive being case in point. And then I go, right, I'm going to learn as I go and write as I'm learning. And so that's why I've written so many because I've tried a lot of things and that's my way of processing. And I love sharing in real time the lessons learned. It is still one of my favorite books. And some of the biggest lessons, I mean, that book in particular was around launching the magazine. So the book I wrote from really 2013 till end of 2014. I mean, it's as relevant today, I think, for anyone starting up because it's about entering a highly saturated market with no idea what you're doing, having never worked in the industry before. And that book is really about becoming fearless and looking at what's the worst thing that could happen and then reverse engineering it. Kind of, I go a lot in my mind's eye in that book to, okay, well, if this happens, then reverse engineer it and who can help me and come back to present day. So I kind of went through a lot of those kind of things. But also I talked about in that book how I did the first deal, which is a really good lesson for anyone in business.
Can you share it for anyone that's not familiar with the story?
So that particular deal, and don't think about the differences here, think about the similarities in business. But I was entering an industry where at the time the main revenue model around magazines was subscriptions or advertising. And the first issue of the magazine was going to cost me $350,000 to put out. And so when you do some very basic maths, if I was selling an ad like they were doing in traditional magazine land at $10,000 a page, I would have had to sell 35 ads to break even. Now, nobody knew me. People said print was dead or dying. I had no runs on the board, so no one was going to listen to me. So rather than do, I would have probably had to sell 70 ads at $5,000 a page. So I did a deal with Commonwealth Bank, a guy called Andy Lark, who was the CMO, so Chief Marketing Officer at the time, for $200,000. And it wasn't a loan from a bank. I've actually never borrowed money from a bank for the business. It was money that they gave me as sponsorship and advertising. And the biggest lesson from that book is really to think differently. And so that was an Australian first. And it was only because I was like, well, I have to do this deal because I need to underwrite the magazine. And doing one deal, I say this all the time in business, doing one deal and finding one person is much easier than finding 70 people. I mean, I had a lot of no's before I had a yes. But what I did was I looked at, and this is why I call BS on anyone who says, I can't start a business because I have no money or I don't know what I'm doing. I have done it all multiple times in multiple different industries. So I looked at, I'm going to have a print magazine. So I thought, well, I can promise them editorial and advertorial. And then I was like, and I can kind of speak by now. So I can go in and do some speaking gigs for their teams. I can give them copies of the physical print magazine. So I think business is a dance, and I talk a lot about that in Daring and Disruptive. It's like when you start out, you've got to kind of give people this much. So they'll give you this much and you're giving them this much. And then as you kind of get a level of success, the tables start to turn and you don't have to give as much away. But I just believe in value stacking. So for the $200,000, which was $50,000 for the first 4 issues is how it ended up. I just was like, right, I'm going to give you basically $200,000 of value per issue. So that is just kind of going, well, advertorial is going to be worth, 10 grand a page, but we're going to give you 4 pages. So there's 40 grand and I come in and do a speaking gig and there's 4 grand. So that's what I do all the time. And that's what I teach a lot of other people to do. And when people say, oh, but you're you, I wasn't always me. And back then, no one knew who I was. And I was selling what I call vaporware. I was selling a thing that didn't yet exist. I did the deal 8 months before the magazine actually launched. And I just was lucky enough that I found someone who still believed in entrepreneurship and women and print magazines. So, but there are a lot of no's before I got a yes. So there's no fast track. You've kind of got to, I was about to say hustle your ass off. I don't really believe in hustle culture anymore, but you do have to believe in yourself and you have to become your greatest salesperson. No one is going to do it for you.
For anyone that's at the start of that journey and getting a couple of no's, what advice would you have to them to just keep showing up? Because as you know, it's hard.
It is hard because, which we'll get to, I've just started Relaunch Collective Hub as a community. So I'm in there all the time helping so many people and very hands-on in the community, helping people with this kind of thing. People are constantly like, well, how do I get out there? Or how do I, and that can be anything from, if we wind it back, you're either when you're starting out producing a service or a product. And I think what a lot of people do is they spend so much time getting the offering right and they spend all their time and energy and money But that, unfortunately, my friends, is just one part of the equation. And where a lot of small business owners or startups, I think, fall down is they produce this incredible product and then no one knows about it. And so you've got to really, I always kind of conceptualize whatever it is that I'm going to be doing. And before I've really done anything, I always come up with a pitch deck and then I go to market. Now that could be pitching to podcasts to say, hey, I want to be on a podcast. Not that I pitched to you, but but like that is a really good thing to borrow other people's audiences and say, hey, I want to, and get people interested before you've even done the product. Meet with distributors of whatever it is that is in your particular line and go, are they going to be interested in distributing it? Retailers, are they going to be interested in stocking it? Sound out your community. I mean, social media is a great time for that real-time feedback loop. If I produce this, will you buy it? That can be the same for a product or a service. Products are much more expensive to enter the marketplace with, services not so much necessarily. Also with products, I've seen way too many people go, I'm going to produce 10,000 of something. It's like, what are the minimum order quantities that you can go in with? Get pre-orders of something and then hit print or production on the thing. So I think there's lots of things you can do and there's lots of different levers you can pull. And I think that's what's important. And what I love about business is you kind of try one thing and if you get a no there, it kind of drives me even more. I'm like, cool, okay, let's go over here and let's go over here. And also with pretty much anything I do, and this is a good tip for anyone, I don't look at the industry that I'm going into. So I'm looking over here. If I'm going into a floristry business because you've got beautiful flowers sitting there, I'm looking anywhere but floristry businesses. I'm starting to think about what else could I do. An example would be this. I've written a lot of books and produced a lot of products. But and the magazine did very well in the US, but then I went on to produce, after I closed the magazine, 108 other products like journals and affirmation cards and dated products. And most people, from a distribution perspective, which is what I tried to do before in the US, they'd find a normal like book or paper-based product distributor. But then you're one of, or 108 of, maybe thousands of other products or hundreds of thousands of other products. So you're in a very saturated marketplace. So we moved to the US in 2022 and I appointed an agency in LA that did not do anything to do with print-based products. They were a giftware. So they did candles and they did, glassware and anything that went into gift stores. And so I appointed them and they took us on and then we did gift fairs 4 times a year, New York, Atlanta, LA, and Las Vegas. And because we were the only paper-based products sitting amongst the rest of their range and I thought differently, we did exceptionally well. And we ended up being in that first year in 40 states, 40 physical states in the US.
Amazing.
And I can't tell you the amount of times I've tried to crack the US before. So I always go, ask better questions, keep going. If I'm getting no's there, well, then I'll try something over here. Like there's so many different ways to do business and that's where it gets exciting.
So many entrepreneurs, we have a tendency of coming up with lots of different ideas and being distracted by shiny new objects.
Yes.
How do you distinguish between maybe boredom or self-sabotage when you're going down a path of a certain idea and not pivoting too soon?
Yeah, it is such a good question because I think depends at what stage you're at. I go probably 95% on gut and intuition, but I think my gut and intuition is so well honed because I've been around for such a long time testing and iterating and things, right? So with the magazine though, even though I got a lot of no's and a lot of big businesses literally laughed me out the door or I didn't even get a meeting with them. They were like, what? You've never worked in meat? Are you on, what is wrong with you? So a lot of that. And there have been other times when I've been like, oh, well, that's time to, pivot or time to change. That's just not. But I just knew in every single cell in my body, like I think there's sometimes an inner knowing where you're just like, no, I just feel this. And my gut served me 100% in that instance Another way of looking at that is I look at it through the lens of purpose. So since 2012, Collective Hub's purpose before we launched the magazine was to ignite human potential. And so now, and for me personally, it's to be an entrepreneur, for entrepreneurs living my life out loud, showing that anything's possible. Again, neither of those have changed since 2012. So what's that, 16 years? How's my maths going? Anyway, whatever that is, where are we?
Long time.
Long time. But the thing about that is like a really good litmus test, because the bright, shiny objects thing, if someone comes at me and says, hey, we should start a microphone business together, like I see opportunity everywhere. So I'm like, great idea, let's do that. But then I always go very quickly back to, does that ignite human potential? Okay, no, that doesn't sit with me at the moment. So I think you've really got to go, do I park that idea for now? How strongly do I believe in that idea? It's also like listening to the whispers. I always go, well, a really good way, because some people say, well, how do I find my purpose? And I go, okay, what makes you want to jump out of bed like every day? What excites you? What makes you feel alive? And then what do other people say around you? Like, do people say, oh, you're a great communicator, or you're a great whatever it is? So you kind of listen to that kind of external validation for a while. And then you go, well, is there something commercial in this, or is this just a hobby, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think, you just keep testing and kind of knowing, well, where does that land, and when do I push on, and when do I just go, well, this isn't right for right now. There've been plenty of things that I have started and knocked on the head very quickly, because I'm like, they don't align. And particularly now, it was different when I had a very big business, because I had a lot of team members. So I used to say I'm the brand architect. So I could come up with a lot of different ideas and a lot of different revenue streams as long as they fitted within the purpose. But then I had a lot of doers and a lot of implementers. But now that it's just me, I'm much more discerning about where I spend my time. I always look at it, effort versus reward. Like, where do I want to spend my time and what is the output? And there are some things, like I spent 3 excruciating years teaching myself the art of fiction, and people might be like, but you've written 40 nonfiction books. It was for me so hard and so complex, and I was excruciatingly bad at it. And I nearly gave up many, many times, but I persevered, and I am so glad, because I just love it now. So, but it made no money for 3 years. It may never make money. So there are certain things you've got to like make decisions around constantly. And I do think people make the wrong decisions. So oftentimes the amount of people who come to me and say, I should write a book, or I want to start a podcast. And I always say, why? Like, what sits at the center of it? And I talk about sequencing, like which piece makes sense when? Because I think a lot of people get that wrong, and they're like, I've got to grow a big social media following. Why? Like, what is at the center of what you're doing, and what is the best iteration of that product or service now? And then what is the best mechanism in which to tell the world about it? So many things make sense to different people at different times.
Yeah. I want to talk about a few things. I want to visit the fiction book in a minute. Yes. I also want to talk about...
delicious.
I also want to talk about the reinvention of Collective Hub. But before we get there, for someone listening that's craving entrepreneurship but doesn't know where to go, because we live in a really uncertain time. Everyone's talking AI. Everyone's also sort of talking about this like nostalgic bringing back in-person community.
Yeah.
What aren't we talking about that you can see an opportunity for someone listening that's got that entrepreneurial spark, ready to run 100 miles an hour at a direction, but just not sure which way? What can you see that maybe most of the world can't?
Yeah, and I love that you've said those two things, because they could not be more polar opposite. So it's good to identify and be aware, and that's why even though I was I was completely technologically inept, let's just say, for like 20 years, because I had so many people doing stuff. But I made it my mission to really learn AI intrinsically. So yeah, definitely those two things. But I think also, see, this is counterintuitive, but I always say look at industries that are already quite saturated, because I remember I did a workshop one day and a guy was talking about doing something with milk, and I was like, great. Like, everyone kind of laughed at him, and I was like, great, people drink a lot of milk or milk variations, right? So there's a ready market for you. So rather than see, a lot of people, I think when they're starting out, they think, oh, we need to invent something completely different or innovate in a way that has never been done before. But I think if you can look at a problem, like a universal problem shared by a big number of people, and there are already certain products or services servicing that I think is a really good place to start because the market is already educated. And then you take some of the current trends, whether they're AI to probably, help you in whatever way with efficiencies and automations and, layer on something to do with AI and everyone will listen.
Yeah.
But also layer on that kind of, isn't it nostalgic, like the in-person, but also this whole generation shunning mobile phones now or social media and wanting analog. And so I think be aware of those things, but then kind of don't try and go for something not obvious. Think about what is everyone using. And I always say this, I always talk about, a chair. Like a lot of people are in the wrong business. They're like, I'm in the business of chairs. And they get so stuck on the delivery mechanism. And I'm like, don't think about that. Think about why we love chairs. Like what is the feeling or why do we buy a chair? And then go, okay, that gives you a lot more opportunity to go, okay, well, maybe it's not about the chair because who knows, maybe next week the way the world's going we'll be on flying carpets. So that's the thing. But also I think in business oftentimes people look at the obvious, but the reason I've built an entire ecosystem of writing books and speaking on stages and doing multiple things is because if I was producing a chair, I might then write a book on how I produce the chair or the business behind the chair or or, whatever it is. And then I might start doing workshops on, well, it's not about the chair, but it's about how do you actually create a product that becomes a cult product. So there are always different ways to build an ecosystem and sort of future-proof your business around something that could be quite obvious. That was lots of little bits and pieces, but I think don't be unafraid of the market that's already saturated because they're educated.
I think that's great advice. And if you take that entrepreneurial mindset and apply it to something that has been stale for 50 years, it's probably, like you say, a little bit easier to get it off the ground as well.
And going back to the magazine, I don't like talking about the magazine forever because I've written 1,000 books on it and it's very well trodden, but it's a good example because I had in my mind, this is actually a really good example. For anyone who doesn't know it in particular, I had a vision. I was like, if we're going to launch a print magazine, then it needs to sit between Vanity Fair, Vogue, and Harper's Bazaar. And so that was an interesting potential conundrum because most of the business magazines at the time were really boring. So I knew that I needed to make it look like a fashion and design magazine so that it would sit there and people would think they knew what they were picking up. They thought they were picking up a fashion and design magazine. But then when they actually got inside it, they were like, oh, it's that, but it's also so much more. So sometimes you need to play with the way that you package something in the marketplace in order to get that ready market thinking they know what they're buying. And so we did launch in 3,506 news agencies in Australia. And then we're in 37 countries, with a similar distribution within 18 months. And there's many stories around that. Anna Wintour flew me to New York. And that story and many others that I've done since really demonstrates the realm of possibility because I knew nothing about print magazines or, media. And here Anna Wintour, the doyen of New York, within month 14, I had an email from her office saying, Anna wants to meet you in New York because we were just doing something differently in a highly saturated industry that she knew way more about than I did. But because I was naive and I hadn't worked in it before, I didn't know there were rules. And so I broke every single one of them. So be unafraid.
I love that you keep bringing up Collective Hub magazine because I miss it. I know so many women and men listening to this episode must miss the magazine as well. But recently you have reinvented it for 2026. And I've been playing it with your new app. It brings education, community connection, AI strategy all into one place. Can you tell us about Collective Hub, are we calling it 2.0?
Yeah, we're calling it 2.0.
2.0.
And isn't it funny? So I have relaunched it with Jade Dunwoody, which is a beautiful story because I don't know if you remember Jade, but Jade was 19 when she started with me in 2011 as an intern. And she went on to work with me for 7.5 years at Collective Hub and became my art director and then my 2IC. And then she went off to work for General Pants as their marketing director and lots of other things. But we've stayed firm friends, and she's just had a baby who's just turned 1 last week. And for those whole 8 years that we've not been together, we kept kind of going, there's something there, there's something there. And then about a year ago, she was learning AI as well. And we started chatting and we were like, oh my God. And the beautiful thing, I mean, it's amazing that we're back together. And so I said to her, you're my co-founder now, like, let's do this together. The beautiful thing is it's very hard for anyone else to get that. I mean, she was there through all of it. She understands the DNA. The interesting thing about that for anyone listening is when you've had a brand that is so big and so loved by so many, really, it was like a cult following between 2013 to 2018.
I think I was telling you at the start of this, the amount of times I posted it on my social media. I have some screenshots I'll show you after this, or I'll put on screen. It was like a status symbol. I found, like, if you're holding the Collective Hub and you're reading it in an airport or a cafe and you spot other people that get it, it's like this nod of like, oh yeah, I get it. It's this cool new version of entrepreneurship that was brewing at the time, and you just captured it perfectly.
Thank you. So it's difficult because even though the print magazine wasn't the biggest part in terms of revenue or profitability, it was definitely the biggest part in terms of having something tangible and physical that you can sample at events. Or as you say, you'd see someone else and you'd be like, oh, they're reading it, you know. Yeah. So there was that beautiful thing. So trying to bring it back in 2026 in a purely digital form for now, it was quite an art form, which I hope we have got right in terms of trying to emulate the community aspect, the, entrepreneurial aspect, the education, the inspiration, all of the pieces. So we decided to build an app, and we kind of visualized it being like multiple rooms. So we were like, because we had so many events and so many in-person things, we were like, right, what can we do in the digital realm? So like there's a room where you can go in and go, I need help with, like, who knows about suppliers in China, or I'm trying to do this. Does anyone know a blah, blah, blah? So we've done that. And then we've got another room, which is like wins and celebrations. So it's like, you can be very lonely being a founder if you've got 200 staff or you're a solopreneur. Mm-hmm. So it's like, go in there and tell people, however big or small your wins, and then everyone can kind of cheer you on. And then we created the playbook. Very obvious name, but we were like, let's make it obvious for people. And then we looked at how do people consume content these days. And I think when you're learning as an entrepreneur, you often just need little snackables. So we made a whole section on cash flow and branding and all the bits that you need to know. And then I've made sort of 1 to 3 minute videos about any sort of question. So there's a whole library of over 100 pieces in there. And then we thought, okay, we need the magazine piece. So then we made the drop, which is the curated, because there's so much noise out there. So we're like, if we can curate the founders you need to watch, the game changers, the brands, the latest AI tools, and what to actually take notice of and what to ignore. So that's what that is all about. And then we're doing lives. So at the moment, we're doing about 3 lives a week, and we're doing sort of sprints so that people feel like they're belonging. Again, looking outside of the industry and looking at a lot of fitness apps. So we've got a whole gamification piece in there and a leaderboard. And then we've built custom AIs. So one of them is loaded up with all 40 of my nonfiction books. So basically, if you ask it anything, it should be able to answer. But yeah, the community aspect and having a place and a space where everyone can go and connect. And there's a lot of AI learnings, and it's kind of like an AI-powered operating system. The intention as we move through and grow the community is to then do a lot more live events. And at some point, we'll have an attempt at bringing back a version of the print magazine, because both Jade and I miss it and love it as much as our community. So yes, watch this space.
I love it. I'm going to link to that in the show notes, so anyone that wants to have a play can definitely find it easily.
Thank you. And we can give your listeners like a 30-day free trial if you want. So
amazing.
Yeah.
You heard it here, guys. I'll put that in there too.
Perfect.
One of the posts that I screenshot from the past was it was a quote in the Collective Hub, which always had beautiful quotes throughout. And it was, imagination is more important than knowledge.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I still think that's as true, if not more true today, particularly, and now you're a mama bear as well. Watching Hugo, I'm just like watching the world through his eyes now. Everything is exciting. And at school, when I was at school, I used to ask, but how, but why? And that saw me being put outside the classroom a lot because I was annoying. But it's that same line of questioning as an entrepreneur, just questioning everything, that has held me in really good stead and has kept my imagination and curiosity at the absolute fore. I think that is the most important skill. Knowledge we can learn, but having that curiosity and that ability to imagine. And I watch Hugo now, we've got chickens and we'll go and collect the eggs. He'll be like, why are there only 3 eggs, Mummy? Why is this there? Why is that bug there? Why? And I'm like, wow, like just that curiosity and the imagination and the play. I think it's so important. I really think you can teach knowledge, but I think having that curiosity and the imagination as entrepreneurs, that is the best skill that we can possibly ever possess.
Being a mum and thinking about schooling and how to foster that creativity and the questioning and not, I guess, lose that magic and that spark throughout schooling. What are your thoughts on how are you going to approach school and prepping your 1, soon 2 babies for a world that is so unpredictable?
It's so unpredictable. And I think the best thing, because we don't know where it's going to go, what jobs will exist. I mean, I think that's why I became a certified prompt engineer. That was the first thing. It sounds so ridiculous, but that was the first thing I did a couple of years ago. I did a certification through Vanderbilt University in the US because I was like, well, if we can educate ourselves and understand those things, and again, coming back to imagination and curiosity and just go, well, this thing is either going to wipe me out being a writer and a creative who hires photographers, videographers, designers. That's my entire world. So I was like, I kind of need to understand what's going on here. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the school system, so Ken Robinson says it so well, it's very convergent, one size fits all. And unfortunately, I think it still seems to be very much like that, as opposed to divergent and kind of choose your own adventure. So yeah, we're definitely, I mean, the daycare he's at the moment is amazing. Like there is just, I mean, they learn Japanese. The kid can hardly speak English. And he's like, but they're doing so many different interesting things all of the time. It is a bit ridiculous. Hugo already has his own like little chicken business, and we're trying to.
Is anyone surprised though, coming from the household that he's in?
Because when you're an entrepreneur and you're on stage and you're like, I had my first business when I was 10. I was like, no, he's going to have his first business when he's 2.
What's his margins on the?
No pressure, child.
No pressure.
So I don't know. At the moment, we're just trying to expose him to as many different people and experiences and, sports and crafts. And like my mother thinks we're absolutely ridiculous. She's like, the kid just turned 3 last week. He has more extracurricular activities, which is interesting as well because we just want him to play and be a kid, but we are exposing him to a lot. And I don't know about the education system. There's a school around Byron called the Community School, which I think is quite different and then the Steiner, and there's lots of different ways of teaching. Yeah, we definitely don't want to go down the traditional one because, I mean, hello, who uses half the stuff we learn at school? I mean, classical studies and algebra and like, I don't know, a lot of it is largely irrelevant. And for me, the majority of my learning has been on the job and by trying things and testing things. So I don't know. I mean, it's also scary. But I mean, speaking of saturated industries, the education system and universities, I mean, all of that is ripe for disruption. So please, anyone who's listening, just
please,
take it on. Be our guest. Yeah.
Fast forward to future, when you and I are no longer around. How do you want your children to speak about you? What would you want them to say?
I think, well, firstly, that I was a great mama bear and that I told them that they could do and be anything that they wanted to be, and there was no judgment, and whatever they want to do and be, that's what I would support. That I never gave up. I mean, that's an important one in terms of how, I'm going to cry, how they both came into the world. I mean, my gosh, I've done like 480 injections or something. And, you know, from a physical and mental and financial perspective, and big shout out to anyone going through IVF or is in the trenches. It is brutal. Luckily, when you're out the other end, and there are ways to come out the other end, you luckily forget about it. But yeah, I think I would want them to know just, you know, how much they are loved and how much we wanted them and how hard we fought to have them. And I'd want them to be proud of me as a person, saying that I lived my life to the fullest and that I had impact on other people and supported other people. And I always wanted to kind of be in service and, you know, use my life as one big fat lesson and, you know, help other people and demonstrate that anything is possible.
Yeah, beautiful. You've spent so much of your career asking other people questions. What's a question you wish you were asked more often or for the first time?
Ooh, that's a good one. See, I'm very good at deflecting. I go, oh, what should people be asked more? I think a simple question sometimes is to actually say, how are you? I feel like when you're someone probably like you and I who just love, I don't know, helping, and I feel much more comfortable helping other people. But I think sometimes we can forget about ourselves, and people always assume that we've got it all together and that we're fine. By the way, I am. But I think sometimes it's nice if people stop and go, but no, how are you really? Because I think I don't often give it much thought, but if someone actually said that, I might be like, let me just do a check. No, I'm actually good now. But there've certainly been times in my life where things have seemed from the outside extraordinary. And that becomes one of that is a peril of success, actually, once you start writing a lot of books. And I mean, I had written a lot of books, and then we went through, well, for a few years, a really tough time. You know, Collective had sort of dissolved in the way that I loved it. And, you know, that was the greatest thing. Then, you know, going through so much IVF, which I didn't talk about until I think around 16, I didn't say anything. So I was out there living a normal life and jumping on and off stages, and people thought, oh, you know, amazing. But that was a very silent pain. And then we tried to renovate our home in Bangalore, and we had to stop work from council for 3 years. So there was just like a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like I'm very resilient. But sometimes I think that it can be hard about being an entrepreneur or a founder or whatever. You can look like you've got it all together. And, you know, I'm meant to be the queen of this stuff. I've written all these books on it. But, yeah, I did go through about 4 years ago some really tough stuff, you know, and it would have been – it's through my own fault probably that people didn't stop and go, are you okay? Because everyone just assumes.
Yeah.
So I think to be more aware of people who often seem like they have it all together.
Yeah. You are kind of the definition of multi-passionate, and I think that word's thrown around a little bit now, and I do think that Gen Z are much better than us at kind of pursuing multiple revenue streams and multiple kind of passions at once. But one of your latest is writing your fiction book.
Yes.
Tell us about it. What can you tell us about it so far?
I can tell you quite a lot about it. I can tell you how difficult it was. So the reason that I transitioned to fiction, and I started trying to write it about 3 years ago. And the reason was that I was attacking a topic that was a bit close to home, and I thought, okay, I can't write this as a nonfiction because all my nonfiction has been my lived experience. So I thought I really want to talk about this, but I don't want to write about it as me. Okay. So anyway, so I started writing this book, and I created these two characters, Jess and Justin. And because it's interesting, having always written nonfiction and being self-taught, I just kind of write what happens. I wrote 35,000 words of these characters basically ping-ponging back and forth, and it was so boring. And I wanted to stab them both. It was awful because I didn't understand the craft of it. And that sounds ridiculous, having written so many books. And I hated these characters. And so anyway, it's actually quite funny because Lou, who's now my literary agent, I said to her, Lou, I need some help. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so she put me in touch with this like fiction helper coach. And I did one session with her, and Joanna said to me, well, just start anywhere. And so that meant nothing to me whatsoever. So I just started writing a chapter in the middle of the book, and but that didn't make sense to me, right? I think we have to find our own way of doing things. Anyway, I sent some to Lou, and she said, that's the worst thing I've ever read. Like, it was so bad.
You need that honest feedback, though. Imagine you publish.
God, it was so bad. I hated it so much. Anyway, so this is important. I discovered there's a book by a woman called Jessica Brody, and it's called Save the Cat. And it is 15 beats. It's like Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey or whatever. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, structure. So it basically goes, beat 1, set up their worlds. Beat 2, they've got to have something massive to lose. And you know how movies kind of go like this.
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh, but then the problem is I tried to retrofit the Jess and Justin book to the beats. Anyway, it just got worse and worse. But what happened was then I started to understand character development. So I introduced this character, Miller, and she is so unhinged and so fun because Jess and Justin were boring the crap out of me. So I was like, I need someone who is so loose. Anyway, I loved writing her. So I shelved the first book completely. Yep. And then I was like, she needs her own book. So she is brilliant. By then I'd kind of learned how to do it, more or less. So yes, so her book is called Matchstick, and it comes out in October, and she is just fun and naughty, and it fits because for a while I was like, how does this fit into igniting human potential? But what I've realized is it is perfect because it's allowed me to write about central female characters that are not just my lived experience. They are so far beyond it. And it's allowed me to tackle, with that book, I'm tackling influencer culture. I'm tackling like moving. She moves from Sydney to LA, so cultural shifts. She then has her own podcast and like all of these things, but I'm tackling it and she's really fun, but also there's like quite a lot of messaging below it. So I've actually fallen in love with fiction writing. I just love it. It's so fun.
When does it come out?
October. And I'm leading, which is interesting, with audio. So I've done a global rights deal for 3 books with Audible. And the reason I did that, I mean, which again is a risk and me being counterintuitive, is because going with a traditional publisher takes several years. I wouldn't publish it myself because I'm not a specialist in fiction or fiction distribution, and I don't want to have large inventory and distribution businesses anymore. So we're leading with Audible, but they are casting a very, very big actress, someone we will all know very well, to do the read. So that will give us a good sort of splash into market. Yeah, so I'm very excited.
I'm excited.
Yeah, and we're also in conversations about screen rights for it as well. So yeah, so who knew? Here we go.
Amazing. Lisa, it's been so fun having you in here today. Before we wrap up, we've started doing Reset Street interviews, which have been inspired by an activity that we do at Reset Retreats. So I'm going to bring a card deck over to you. You're going to pick a card. Each card has the start of a sentence. You're going to read it out and say whatever comes to mind. Sound good? Yeah?
I love it. Let's go. All right. A piece of advice I'd give someone going through a breakup would be, read my book, Breakups and Breakthroughs. No. I would say, well, from personal experience, an end can be a beautiful new beginning.
Lisa, thank you. You have shared so much wisdom. You have also shared stages with the likes of Richard Branson and all kinds of people around the world that I admire. So thank you for agreeing to join me in the Reset Podcast studio today. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I can't wait to watch your career continue to pivot and evolve and pursue whatever you find interesting at the time. I believe that for the rest of your life, you are going to be creating, and your kids are going to be so proud to watch that happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for such a beautiful podcast. And yeah, I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to watching you evolve and keep, transitioning into whatever's next. Very exciting.
Thank you.